Hello, and welcome to the Family Renewed channel. My name is Dr. Dawn, and I am here to you today to help you start a new you in a new year. Now, here on Family Renewed channel, I'm also the creator of the I'm also the founder of Family Renewed, and the creator of the ABCs of Family Resiliency and the Thriving, Not Just Surviving workshop series. Today, I'm here to help you welcome in the new year with with some tips and tricks that you can use to help you create the family that you are hoping to create. As I now look to bring up my PowerPoint, we will have an opportunity to oh, I don't know if everybody can see my screen. But what I'd like to do again is we will be talking about the ABCs of family resiliency and how to create a new you in the new year. I am so sorry. Okay. So the idea is let's change the narrative. And if you'd like to know more information about me, Dr. Dawn, you can always go to my website at familyrenewed.com. There you can find information about the programs that I offer, workshops that I create. But today we are going to focus on changing the narrative. For all of you out there, there is a lot of negativity out there in the world. And a lot of what we understand is that negative energy just kind of consumes us and it overwhelms us. And so many times we find it hard to just make it through the day. And so I thought one of the things that could be helpful for people, especially as we're going into the new year, is figuring out ways that people can create a new dynamic and think about things in a different way so that they can make this their best year yet. And the whole idea is thriving, not just surviving in 2025. Now, one of the things I want to know is how many of you are looking to thrive in 2025? If you are one of those people, please post in the chat, give me an emoji or something just so I know you're there, and let me know what you're thinking. Are you ready to thrive in 2025? All right. Well, I've got one hand up there. So one of the things that I would like to do is just make sure that you understand the whole idea about thriving, not just surviving. In some of the first programs that I did, I would talk to people and, they're saying, I'm surviving, they'll be fine. But I think people really want to thrive. And so the whole idea behind today is to help you thrive in 2025. So, as you see in this graphic here, we are looking at two people high-fiving because that's a symbol that things are going well. And so I want to help you get to the point where you can feel like you are high-fiving. That is kind of my idea, is thriving, not just surviving. In 2025, we'll be high-fiving. Now, if you think that you have how many challenges have you been through, or what challenges have you or someone you know experienced in life? I mean, I know we all have dealt with the pandemic, which was an overwhelming time for many of us. For most of us, there was a lot of loss. There was death. There was just being isolated from people. And we know that with the pandemic, many people found themselves just going into a depression. We saw with the studies that came out after that people who were depressed already became more depressed. People that were overwhelmed or stressed, the anxiety went up. And then medical issues got worse because of some of the stress and depression. We know that the mind and the body come together and they impact each other. So it's really important to understand how we change that narrative and get ourselves in a healthier space. So can would anybody like to share some challenges that they know that other people have experienced? I know when I do these workshops in around the area, a lot of times our teenagers talk about um, bullying in school, but we also have bullying in our jobs. People are very negative, and oftentimes people don't want to give someone a chance. And so one of the things that we know is that hurt people hurt people. And so if you're hurting, or if you know someone who's hurting, oftentimes they will take that out on the people around them. And so we often feel the brunt. And so, one of the things I wanted to talk about first was laying a foundation to understanding some of the issues and how that impacts us overall. So, when we are in a negative space, I don't know if you remember when you were younger and we talked about osmosis in school, in science, and how things kind of seep into your brain. Well, one of the things that it's important to understand is that everything that is happening around you is seeping into your spirit, and it's seeping into who you are as a person, and it can zap your energy, especially if you're around a lot of negativity, which many of us are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so it's being mindful that our brain, when it takes in this negative energy, it ends up pulling for it. And it's almost like our brain adapts to it and it starts actually looking for it. So, one of the things that I want to talk about, and just to kind of give you a little bit of structure for today, is we're going to talk about some of that underlying stuff that really kind of puts us in a space where we see what happens. It's kind of like recognizing these things that happen. And once you understand how our brain works, or how these issues kind of impact us, then it's easier to start recognizing how these strategies that I'm going to talk about can help you change kind of the course of your life and your journey. So the next thing that we will talk about is different tips and trades and tricks that you can use, and some of the things that I recommend that you use within the different realms of my 6 simple strategies that we have with the ABCs of family resiliency. So again, we're going to just talk a little bit about kind of this overview. Then we'll go more into the ABCs of family resiliency, and then we will talk about the simple strategies. So getting back to the brain, and we were talking about osmosis. Now, how many of you have noticed that when you are feeling sad or down, it's almost like you attract people who are also feeling sad and down? Have you heard of the phrase misery loves company? If you've heard that phrase, give me an emoji in the chat so I can know that you're kind of following me with what we're talking about. And so again, so with some of these things, we find that negativity just kind of takes over, and we have a hard time moving. And as we attract more people who are negative, we get even more negative, and we find ourselves kind of slipping into a hole. And if you're not careful, you'll notice that people that you're around, like at work or in school or wherever you're engaging with people, you'll find that you become more and more negative as you recognize, as you start actually looking for negative things. So you start questioning things about other people. People may say something to you that is relatively innocuous, but because you're in such a negative space, you take it negatively. And then you send that negativity back out, and then it just really destroys your relationships. And so it's important to understand that our brains are impacted by this on a daily basis. Every experience that you have had since you were born. And so one of the things that's, when you think about it, you need to understand that we have all dealt with naysayers in our life. From childhood on up, somebody is saying something negative at some point about us. And these things actually stick into our brain. And it's important to recognize how much negativity we have infiltrated into our spirit. And when you think about that, and some of the times, and I don't know if you're a parent, you may recognize that, you oftentimes only pick up or notice the negative things because people are so busy that you oftentimes ignore the things that are going well. Many of you have heard the phrase, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And unfortunately, that's kind of how our relationships do as well. You oftentimes kind of ignore or take the positive things in our relationships for granted, and you focus on everything that's negative, and you find yourself becoming more and more frustrated or angry or irritable. And then you start seeing it affect other things. It makes it harder, maybe sometimes, to sleep. And so, some of the things that we think about when we're talking about depression is we look at these things like, are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? How is your energy? Are you having a hard time focusing and concentrating on things? These are signs that you may be depressed. And so one of the things that's when you understand this, you can start recognizing that sometimes helping yourself make those intentional changes can make a difference. So even things like making yourself eat something and get up and eat, because oftentimes it's a reciprocal thing. If you're not eating, you probably don't have energy to do anything, and you're tired and you're laying around in bed. And sometimes it's just getting up and getting out. And one of the things that many people will do is, we hear about exercising, and that can help kind of bring your energy up, and it helps release endorphins that kind of get you moving. So again, going back to this negative space that many of us are in, and thinking about all these issues that you might be dealing with or that you may have experienced from your childhood, if you take a really good look at things that are happening in your life today, you can many times link it to something, if you really look hard enough, back into your past. Whether it was being, someone saying that you are like you have a screw loose, or maybe saying that just, sometimes even just people joking around and, seeming to be just kind of giving you a hard time. But really, it can be much worse than that, because it seeps into your energy and to your space. And then it again replicates and takes off. And so one of the things that's important to understand is, how do you intentionally make that change? So one of the things I want you to understand is, or to know, is that you can create the family and the life that you want, but you just have to be intentional about it. So in this in situation, I don't know, some of you may remember this from one of the Tyler Perry movies, or it may be that you see things around in your neighborhood or your community or on the news, the police lines. You may be dealing with a lot of health issues or helping someone who's got health issues, especially those of us who are in the sandwich generation. There may be rumors or bullying and things like that, or relationship problems. And so some of the things that are important to understand is looking at these negative experiences that you don't even necessarily have to have one on. It may not be something that happened directly to you, but you may get that feeling and that energy from people who are dealing with that when you're trying to kind of support them through what they're going through. And so another thing that we think about is, many of us like to listen to music. And it's really important to think about what are you listening to? Because that music makes a difference. And I often hear individuals talking about some of the songs that they say they don't really think about the words, because there could be uh, a lot of negative discussions or connotations or representations of groups of people or or gender. And when you do that, even though you feel like you're just listening to the music and you like the beat, that those messages are still getting in, and that negativity feeds in, and then it does affect your brain, and then your brain adapts to that and starts looking for things and situations that engage that as well. And so when you think about where words fail, music speaks. So sometimes if you're feeling depressed, a lot of times people will focus on listening to music that is depressing or about breakups or about wherever they're at. Again, that misery loves company, but that actually just really pushes you further deep down into that negative space. However, if you are listening to more positive songs, upbeat songs, you will find that your energy will change accordingly. And the kinds of television shows that you watch, for those of you who like maybe mysteries or murder mysteries or some of these um, uh, negative kinds of um, television shows or movies that are really hard on people, and showing life in a very stressful way, you're going to feel that energy. But if you watch shows that maybe have more positive endings or positive relationships, interacting with each other in a positive way, you will find that that can help you create those same kinds of energies in your own space. Um, Now, when we think about some of these things that have gone into our brains and into our bodies, remember that when we've had a trauma of some sort, it affects our whole body, our senses, and whatever we have. What the more senses that it has affects, the more um, the more ingrained it becomes in us, and so it's really key to recognize some of these things that have happened in your life. So if you experience even a bad breakup when you were in high school, or maybe something happened with a friend and you all were great friends and everything fell apart, but things, I mean, relationships can be traumatic. If your parents got divorced when you were young, or if you lost a parent at any age, that is a huge impact on you. And you have to, and the way that it affects you in different ways and how you experience that can hold you back, as opposed to being able to turn it into as kind of an energy where there's a little bit more positive. As you work through your grief, you can find your way to a place of acceptance and being able to remember and enjoying the times that were good. I mean, even when you've been in a relationship with someone and it may end, if you can go back and think about those things that you enjoyed in that relationship and build from that and learn from that, you will have a healthier opportunity to engage in relationships in the future, whether that's at home, at work, or in school. So it's really important. And that's why one of the reasons why I kind of started this ABCs of Family Resiliency is because we recognize that our first relationships are the ones in our home. And if there's a lot of negative or trauma, or you may not learn how to have healthy relationships. But if you've had a lot of positive relationships and modeling and growth, then you will more likely have healthier, positive relationships. And so the more, with school and with jobs and everything, we have orientation that helps us, figure our way through and navigate these spaces. But we don't have that for our families and for our relationships. And so that's where this kind of grew out of, trying to help people recognize some of those things as a mother, as a sister, as a daughter, as a wife. Excuse me, there are many roles that you play, and understanding where those relationships hit and how they work and how they impact gives me that space, in addition to being a psychiatrist and just having some of these innate skills that have been honed, and just kind of understanding relationships. And so that's kind of where some of these things have come from. So now, as I talk about the thriving, not just surviving, so when we get into these negative spaces, that the cycle of trauma is something that just keeps going. So if you look at this, oftentimes, if you've been traumatized in whatever way that could have been seeing an accident, could be seeing, news that's very negative, even, seeing the devastation from earthquakes or the devastation from the hurricanes, the pandemic as well. This, if you continue to focus in that negative things, you'll start to see it coming out in your behaviors. Whether it's anger or frustration or sadness or bitterness or isolation, whatever it is, it's going to come out in some way. And oftentimes that may be through your behaviors, kind of like what we were showing earlier. And you can see in this depiction here, where you've got, relationships that are at odds, or maybe there's been an accident, sometimes alcohol, substance abuse, domestic violence often comes out of this. And because people aren't managing their history, their trauma, and how they move forward in relationships that they're in. And it can affect your job and, not being able to be successful in an environment where relationships are required to be successful. With your relationships with your coworkers. And excuse me. Anyway, and so if you get the services that can be helpful, so for teenagers, it might be school counselors, or, it might be community mental health centers. It could be rehab services to help you with alcohol or substance abuse or whatever whatever you might be dealing with. And it could be, or you could end up in like the justice system or the criminal justice system. And because of the choices that you may be making based on experiences that you had when you were younger. And if you aren't careful, you'll just keep kind of going through this cycle. And then you can oftentimes move to recovery if you get the help and the support that you need, which is what we want. As a psychiatrist, it can be behavioral things. It can be just interacting with people, communicating. It can be modeling. It can be working with how you think about things. Remember, we talked about the negativity and the positivity. And it could sometimes be medication. But whatever it is, that can help you get to recovery. Because without whatever that piece might be, it can continue to destroy relationships and cause your relationships with your children, your coworkers, your family, your parents, your siblings to just continue to falter. So again, this is one of the reasons why it's important to understand that cycle of trauma and recognizing that and understanding that, you can create that environment that you want. You just have to be intentional about it. And so again, that's where we're coming from with this webinar. Now, so what I want to do is change the narrative. So we've talked about kind of this negativity. We've talked about the trauma. We've talked about, kind of the idea of where it comes from and what needs to happen. But now, how do you actually change the narrative? And so this is where I want to spend a lot of time kind of going through some of these spaces. And then we can talk about some of the specific skills and steps and tricks that you can use to really help you move into a space of positivity. So I want you to repeat after me, and I'm going to say this first, but I have the power to change my own destiny, but I must be intentional. So wherever you are, I want you to repeat this and to say this with me, or to repeat after me. I have the power to change my own destiny. Say it wherever you are. But I must be intentional. Okay, now we're going to do this one more time. And I want us to say it together. I have the power to change my own destiny, but I must be intentional. Now, remember how I said earlier how the brain kind of grabs onto things and depends on how many senses, whatever sensory modalities we've used, it can actually make a difference in how we see things. And it really kind of infuses in us more and becomes a part of us. So if anybody saw what I If you saw it, did anybody write it down? I see Alexis Gaffney typed it into the chat. Very good, Alexis. Did anybody else chat or write it down while they're doing? Because I really want you to take notes, because there's a lot of key tips that I'm going to give you soon. And the more you take down, the more you can learn and use some of these strategies with you. So I have the power to change my own destiny, but I must be intentional. Well, good job there, Miss Alexis, and kudos to you. Now, next, we're going to talk about the ABCs of family resiliency. So we've got the first one is anticipating your challenges. Number 2 is broadening your faith. Number 3 is building your resources. Number 4 is capitalizing on your strengths. Number 5 is cultivating your relationships. And number 6 is committing to your family. So if thinking about all these things are going to help you understand the tips, and I'm going to give you some tips as I go through each one. Now, the whole idea about this is getting us to wellness. And we've talked about the goal is being intentional. And so we want to change the way our brain is thinking, right? We've talked about this. So the first thing I want you to think about is when we talk about anticipating your challenges, think about it as opportunities for growth. So instead of taking that negative space of anticipating your challenges, think about opportunities for growth. Every experience that you have in your life, good, bad, or otherwise, is an opportunity to learn something about you, learn something about your needs, learn something about how you can do things differently, and change your trajectory. So don't get upset about these things that don't go the way that you want. Learn from them, grow from them, and make it something positive that you can take with you moving forward, okay? Now, then the next is, and when you anticipate your challenges, you get an opportunity to think about and prepare yourself. Just like if you're going into battle, if you're taking a test for school, you study before it. If you know that you have a challenge that's coming up, if you prepare for it, you can get yourself in a space so that you are more able to handle it when it comes your way. So the next is what I want you to just think about, and you can write this down. What opportunities for growth have you experienced? And just write it down so that you can think about it, because I want you to be able to reflect on it a little bit later, okay? Now, the next is broadening your faith. Now, when I talk about faith, it's a number of things. And so it's not only is it faith in yourself, because a lot of times we have lost our self-confidence because of people around us telling us that we won't be able to do this, or you're never going to do this, or you're never going to be good at anything. We have to take that back and own who we are, and bring ourselves to a space where we can have faith in ourselves. And so a lot of that, again, is this mind game that seems to be being played, and we have to be mindful that people around us are not necessarily doing it intentionally, because people are just in negative spaces, but you don't have to accept that. And then trying to have faith in others, recognizing that not everything that people do is intentionally negative. Sometimes it's an error, just like you make mistakes and you want to be given grace for the choices that you might make from time to time. You need to be able to be thinking about others and do the same. And having faith in them gives you an opportunity to give them a break if something happens that you know them well enough to say, you know what, I know they're a good person. I know this probably wasn't intentional. How can we work through this together? And again, we'll talk about that more when we talk about communication and relationships. And then faith in a higher power is another area where many people lean on to really get that strength from, to help them navigate. You just feel like there's just no answer. And if you think about that, there's somebody out there or some power out there make a difference and that knows what's going on, it can give you some comfort. Next is building your resources. And so with this, it's again the brain thing. So it's that trick of the brain, and we have to really think about how we build on our resources, because we all have plenty of resources. We just don't realize it many times. So this is a mind game. And so one of the things that, again, we're thinking mentally and intentional about things. Oops, sorry. So from a biological perspective, we can do exercise, right? We can be thinking about our sleep, how much, what are we eating, being more thoughtful about getting outside, exercising, getting sunlight. All of these things can help our vitamin level, our vitamin D levels. And one of the things that we've noticed is vitamin D levels are dropping because we're not getting enough sunlight to change and to make the transition in our skin, or the trans it from a chemical perspective. Sorry, can't think of the right word, but from a biological perspective, the things that you eat, how you move in the world, your physical activity. And remember, I mentioned it before, is when you're physically active, it releases endorphins that actually make you feel better. From a psychological perspective, the way, again, we talked about the thoughts that you're bringing into your brain, what you intentionally bring into your mind, that can really make a difference in helping you understand how you move in the world and pulling yourself and intentionally being more positive. And so when you journal, you can make that an intentional decision to be more positive. And I'll talk about some strategies that you can use in a little bit. And I know we're running out of time. And then socially. So from a social perspective, who are the people that you're hanging out with? Again, if you're hanging out with people that are very negative, then you're going to pull in that negative energy. If you're hanging out with people or if you're attracting people that are positive, you're going to get that positive energy. Now, I'm not saying abandon your friends or your family who are not in a good space. You can maybe help lead them into getting into a more positive space. Using some of the strategies that we're talking about now, it could mean even going and seeing a psychiatrist or seeing a therapist or seeing a psychiatrist for medication. But those things are going to help them in the long run to have a healthier life full of peace, love, and joy, which is what all of us want in the end, right? So here's just a little graphic. So the women doing yoga, you've got the diet, you've got healthy food here. In the middle, you've got, which is kind of the biological. In the middle, you've got some of that psychological, she's breathing in kind of just the natural energy and just maybe meditating or just reflecting on things and taking some time just for herself. And then you've got Bob Marley and his energy of just the one love. I mean, just that positivity and bringing that into your space is going to make you feel better in the long run. And then the last three, it's finding time for yourself and socializing with other people. So you've got, people on team sports or activities and doing things together. So you're getting the physical, you're getting the social, you're getting the psychological. These are great opportunities and ways to just get yourself into a more positive space. Capitalizing on your strengths. So this is about taking time to, one, self-reflect. So instead of saying, like, remember the negative of I can't do it, doing things and saying I can do it. So this is something I want you to write down. These three things. This is something that's really important. And I want you to do this at least once a week, maybe on Sunday. If you can do it more, that's going to be even better. But again, it's about reminding yourself to be intentionally positive. Most days, we're just going to be thinking about something negative, what went wrong at work, what went wrong with our kids. I mean, it's easy to fall into that trap because we're in such a negative space around us. But so the three things are, number one, something I like about myself is. Number two, something good that happened this past week was, or it could be today or yesterday if you're doing it more frequently. And number three, something I'm thankful for would be. And it's important because, a lot of times we don't think about some of the little things that we can be thankful for. Yeah, maybe something didn't happen. I was talking to someone earlier today and they were talking about, something that just kind of didn't go the way they wanted. And, we were actually on a shuttle and at the airport, and they were talking about going to the Caribbean. and they talked about something, on the way back. It was really kind of a disastrous travel coming back, and she kind of really talked a lot about that. And I said, you know what, but let's just focus on the positive. My goodness, you were just, and she was like, yeah, I know, right? And so, but sometimes we just find ourselves just falling into that negative space when it's just take that moment to flip it into the positive, and you're going to find yourself feeling so much better. Cultivating your relationships. Communication is key. You've got to take time to hear people out, give people a chance, and you've got to give your time. Time is a precious commodity. Your family, your friends, when you're not, when you have to think about where you're choosing your time. And I know a lot of times we're on our phones a lot, and I know my kids have said that to me as well about being on your phone when you're in the car instead of maybe communicating or talking or spending time. And we complain about this generation, having poor social skills, or most likely having a hard time socializing because they're spending so much time on social media or on their phones. We have to be good models because we know how to do it. We've just gotten caught up in this same space. And if you think about when we did not have these cell phones, we could shut down after 5 o'clock. We didn't have to worry about people because people didn't have all of our home phone numbers. We could go outside and play, or for the kids, there was just so much more that you could do to enjoy and engage with people that gives off more positive energy. So again, I think this is an opportunity for you to think about how you look at your relationships. And then honoring your differences. We all come from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. We have different beliefs. We have different values. Everybody, different political views. There is so much that is different. But there's so much that is also the same. We all really want to be healthier, have healthy lives and families, and for our kids to do well and just to be in a good space. But we may have different ideas on how to make that happen. That doesn't mean that anyone is right or wrong. We need to learn how to value and understand and have healthy conversations about this. That's how we come to some consolidation and solutions, so that people aren't so angry and ready to, kill people or blow things up. And, we've got to understand and take that time, and things can get better. And we can start just within ourselves and our families, and then it can spread and grow. And then again, like I said before, giving grace. When we oftentimes we want people to give us grace when we make a bad choice, but oftentimes we're not willing to give grace to others. And so one of the things that I will do is I will try, whenever somebody does something that I don't like, or that I feel is, a slight in some way, I try and give an excuse that I would think is a plausible excuse. So for example, I'm driving down the highway or whatever, and a car speeds by me and cuts me off. I might say to myself, you know what? They're probably rushing a child to the emergency room because they got hurt. Or maybe they're rushing to the hospital because she's in labor. Both things that I've had to do before, right? I don't know that I cut people off. I don't know. But just being mindful, because then one, they're not even thinking about you. And two, that helps keep you from going into that negative rabbit hole of just looking for negativity. And then it just keeps on feeding itself. And then the last one is committing to your family. And that's really about knowing your roles and your responsibilities in your family, and being and recognizing the importance of each role that you have and how you manage these roles, and being mindful of how you cultivate different relationships based on your roles and your responsibilities. And are you living up to your role and your responsibility? If you're not, do you need some help? How do you help each other become healthier when it comes to your relationships within your family or within your friend groups? How do you have those conversations so that things can get better? And so that you can have a healthier relationship that you want just as much as the other person wants. It's hard, but if you really take the time, you can find that energy. But sometimes we just get in such a rush. But things like more family games, you know, that's one of the things I did this year is giving out more family games this year because it really encourages and be intentional to encourage family time as opposed to kids just getting on their video games. I had a mom earlier today talking about how she can't, get her child to get off the video game. And I was saying, and we came up with some strategies of things that they can do. And so it's really important to think about how are these things that I can do that I can make these little changes within my life, my family, my relationships to have healthier families. And again, time is a precious commodity. There's only 24 hours a day. Sometimes we feel like, we know that's not enough. But if we didn't have the technology that we had, right? So the technology with the microwave ovens and the cell phones and all of this, it helped us save time, right? But it only helped us save time to do more things. We didn't take that time and use it to enjoy our family or to engage. So, to me, it's, cooking dinner with your family has a different impact than throwing something in the microwave oven or going to a fast food place and just getting something to eat and getting on the go. So it's really being mindful about how you can recreate some of the time that you want and need to really create that environment, that nurturing environment that you want in your family. And again, being empathic, recognize that, you may not be going through it, but you can sometimes put yourself in somebody else's position and try and understand where they're coming from. I remember, it's happened a number of times, but, sometimes people are just going through a rough space. And instead of getting angry and frustrated with them, take time to try and understand what was going on in their life in that moment that maybe they let you down or they didn't do what you needed them to do in that moment. Give them grace and be empathic because you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. We see on social media what we want people to see. People are probably saying, I want that life, but you don't know what's going on behind that life. It looks like it's all great and roses and sunshine, but you see even a lot of the entertainers, they go through the same kinds of issues that people who are not in the entertainment industry or professional athletes or whatever. They have different stressors, different issues, but they have, families with medical issues and things and so on. So be empathic and be understanding and try and take a different space. And again, the more you can put yourself in a positive space and be thinking in the positive space, the easier it's going to be for you to give grace to other people who are in a positive space. And sometimes we have jobs that put us in a negative space often because of what we're hearing or seeing or listening to, whether you're a police officer and dealing with crime or gang violence, or whether you're a psychiatrist or a surgeon that's dealing with, trying to, somebody that's sick or ill, or doctors, lawyers. Every career can have a side of it that is not positive, but you can find ways to come up with that positive so that you can feel better and that you can make a difference and you can have a different perspective in your own life and your own space. Kind of that's, I want to go over a few things, but I do want to give you a few resources that you can use. So again, there's always the professionals. There's psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, marriage counselors, family therapists. There's a lot, and you just have to do a lot of research. And yes, it can be really challenging navigating that space. And so finding ways to get that extra help or support, you may have to look outside the box and look for different things because maybe you're not able to get what you specifically need or want for your family from a professional because of maybe your insurance or whatever plans that you have. With your phone, there's different apps like the suicide prevention app, which is My3, it's on there, or a friend asks. And then there's the 988. And I really want you to remember this number, 988. Right now we're in the time of the holidays. It can be a really hard time for people in general, for loss and just everything that's going on and just everything that's happening in our country and in our world. And so, we're seeing higher rates of suicide in our kids. And so, be aware of that crisis hotline number. It's a voice or a text. You can get somebody 24 hours a day. There's somebody that can help. They can send somebody out to help you, or if you think somebody's in trouble, you can have them go to them. And so really take advantage of these opportunities and these resources if you need them. Someone, if you write them down, somebody that you know will need them, because 1 in 4 adults are dealing with a major mental health issue, and 1 in 5 youth are. And it's the second leading cause of death. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in our young between 15 and 23. Now, then there's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They have a lot of programs, a lot of workshops, trainings. They have culturally diverse. They have culturally specific for different marginalized groups. There's the number for the St. Louis as well as for the Southwestern Illinois. And then there's ACAP has facts, the facts for families. So different things, you can go on their website and they'll give you information on children and different issues that you might be dealing with the children. And then I offer Family Renewed. I offer master classes. So we will go through like these ABCs of family resiliency. Actually, I have it coming up starting Wednesday. But and those, if you go to my website, you can find them. There is a fee, but the first 50 people that sign up for any of them can get 50% off. So if that's something that you want to look for. We also have workshops. I provide workshops, and so I have one coming up in February. It's trauma and the ABCs of family resiliency. And then I also do retreats. And so with the ABCs of family resiliency, the masterclass series that I have coming up, it'll be one of these topics each month. And then in June, I'll be offering a family retreat where it's like a weekend, a long weekend. And in June, it'll be the second weekend in June, where it'll be here in St. Louis metro area, but where we will really go through these strategies. We'll do activities and things to really help you bring in all those senses so that it encourages and it really gets solidified in your family. And then I have other things that I will be doing as well, like quarterly Q&A events on the 5th Wednesday of the month, which will be January 29th is the first. So just a couple of key takeaways. Remember, this is a mind game. Your mind is powerful. So you've got biological things. We talked about physical exercise, sleep, what you're eating, and then psychological, what you're putting in your brain, kind of the challenges or the opportunities for growth that you've experienced over your life and how you're dealing with them, and the journal that we talked about, and then the social things, what you're doing with others around you. And so here are some key takeaways again. So remember, some things that they say: exercise at least 30 minutes a day, try and get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, have a healthy diet. How are you treating your body? And then from a psychological perspective, anticipating your challenges. Remember those opportunities for growth. It's all about perspective, and you have the power to change the narrative. Meditation, take control. And what are you putting into your mind? Your music, your movies, the news, the social media, what you're reading, your thoughts. Really take notice of that. And then from a social perspective, cultivate those relationships and utilize those resources in your community, whether it's your church or your gym or your, just people that that are maybe good at some areas, ask them for help. It's okay. And then remember, who are you spending time with? So again, my trauma and the ABCs of family resiliency workshop, February 22nd, 2025. That will be in my on my Family Renewed website. My quarterly Q&A, the 5th Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. The first one will be January 29th. And then the first Wednesday of the month are my ABCs events, the master classes. So I don't know if anybody had any thoughts, questions, but again, you can you can go to my Facebook page. You can go to my YouTube channel. This will be on so people can come back and listen to it. And then again, I will be doing more throughout the year. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate all of you for coming out, and yeah, and thank you. And I wish you guys a very happy holiday. I hope you've gotten motivated to for a new you in the new year, and maybe you can high five. I've got my shirt here that I made for those if anybody's interested. It's I'm thriving, not just surviving. And then it's in 2025, I'm high fiving. Over here somewhere. But anyway, so and I think that's it. Thank you again for joining, and I will see you next time. And for those of you who are going to join me on Wednesday, we will have an in-depth masterclass on anticipating your challenges, where you can go back and look into your history and we can start thinking about what challenges and how do you start to navigate them. All right, thank you, and you guys have a safe and happy new year. Bye.